Thank you so much. I was reflecting on Martin's keynote before and remembering when we did the marshmallow test with our kids. And have you all done that with your kids before? It's a challenge when, our poor kids, we've got 5 between us, Ash and I, and as psychologists and coaches, they have to go through all the experiments. Well, I'm thinking, but not the ethics committee won't pass that one either. But yeah, I remember one of our sons, he would literally put his mouth over the top of it and practically put it in his mouth, but then he wouldn't actually taste it, and then he'd walk away, and I'm sitting there going, wonder what that's going to lead to in terms of successful marriages and stuff like that as well. So anyway, and also this is not a dead animal. This is a mic. So just again. All right, psychological safety, psychosocial risk, psychosocial hazards, psychosocial safety. Is your head spinning with some of these kind of concepts and terminology? And they're used quite interchangeably as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about the differences, and we're also going to talk about, Sasha's going to give you some examples on how you can respond when people have some negative reactions or have some negative connotations associated with it. So she'll give you a few tips on that. I wanted to start with a bit of going on a little bit from what Martin was saying around the noise example. Yeah? Has anyone worked in an open plan office before? Yeah? So that is an example of a psychosocial risk, right? So when there's noise in an office, it can create a bit of a distraction for some people, and that's something that I've noticed that I can do. I could be writing a report and suddenly I'm starting to write about someone else's conversation in my report because my attention's drawn away. And so what's interesting around psychological safety is do we feel safe to actually raise this concern with the people that we work with when someone's being noisy or when we're feeling distracted? And so we're going to talk a little bit about what all that means and what it looks like. And some of us feel very comfortable and confident in being able to say, hey, I'm finding it really hard to concentrate. And other people will instead keep quiet and they'll suffer in silence. And instead, as they're suffering in silence, they're building resentment and frustration and anger. And then it comes out in other conversations, usually in gossip and, blaming Sasha for being the noisy one in the group and, what have you. Which she is actually, but she's open to that. All right, so the interesting thing around psychological safety is that it's quite an unknown concept, yeah? And largely because it's invisible. We can't see psychological safety. We see behaviours and we see actions and we see interactions that might be a result of poor or high psychological safety, but psychological safety is our thinking, it's our thoughts. So do a little experiment with you for a moment. So in a moment, I'm gonna walk around the room, and if I touch you on the shoulder, it means I'm gonna call on you to stand up and give your definition of what psychological safety is. Okay, you're only going to have 10 seconds to really think about what your true definition of psychological safety is. And if I tap you on the shoulder, I need you to stand up and I need you to say something. No, I'm not going to do it. I saw her face. So, with psychological safety, what's going on for you? What happened for you as I was walking towards you? Panic set in, yeah. And you're thinking what? What are you thinking? Don't pick me because you're asking me to think on my feet. I know what it is, but at the same time, how do I express it? And I don't want to look silly in front of all of my colleagues. Or maybe you're going, I'm the guru in it, and I don't want to, put Abby down, or who knows what it is. But so you're starting to, all of that's running through our heads constantly, and we're not clear about what that is for other people. And we often think what we're fearful of is what other people are fearful of as well. So as coaches and as psychologists, we have to build psychological safety with our clients pretty quickly, don't we? Yeah? It's impossible for when someone walks into your office or when you go and see them, unless they share with you what their thoughts and their feelings and their concerns are, then it's very difficult to know how to help them. What we're going to talk about today is the concept around team psychological safety. So a lot's done around leadership psychological safety, but today we're talking about teams. And why we chose to do that is one, because some research that's coming out with around Amy Edmondson. Who's heard of Amy Edmondson before? Yeah, guru of psychological safety. Around a lot of people leave organisations based on how safe they feel with the people that they work with in their teams. Yes, we know that leaders play a big impact on the psychological safety, but also in teams. Yeah. So I really love my leader, but I struggle working with the person, closest to me. Or I struggle with some of finding my voice and being able to feel heard with the people that I work with. So we're quite keen to share with you our psychological safety instrument, which I believe many of you have actually filled in, which is great. So we're going to go through the data of that and give you some real life kind of examples of what that would look like for a team. Okay. And then, Sasha's going to go through a lot of the insights that we found with your data, as well as how that plays out for other organisations as well. All right, so Amy Edmondson, I hope you can read that okay, but it's pretty bright, is that all right? Sure can.
Happy to share.
Yeah, happy to share, yeah. So Amy Edmondson, she talks about psychological safety as the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns or mistakes, and that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. So are we free to be ourselves? Are we free to say, hey, I'm really struggling with the noise in this room? Are we free to say, that interaction that we had the other day didn't go as well as I thought it would. Can we talk about it a bit more? Or, hey, I've got a really cool idea. It's totally outside the box and I'm not sure if we've done this before, but are you open to hearing it? So we are conditioned to not have these conversations so much. In fact, we're actually conditioned to have a thing called artificial harmony. People experience that? Yeah? What happens with artificial harmony is we've got all these thoughts and these feelings and these ideas, but we're not just expressing them based on our fear, or based on our beliefs, or based on our views, or based on our experiences, and therefore the meanings that we make of those experiences. So Amy Edmondson, for those of you who are not aware, she's a Harvard researcher, and she started her first research project looking around psychological safety amongst hospitals. And she found psychological safety by accident, really, because her hypothesis was teams with high psychological safety will have less hazards, less incidences. And she found the opposite. Yeah, she found that in actual fact, teams with high psychological safety reported a lot more hazards and had a lot more incidences. Why? They reported it. It was safe to do it. It was safe to talk about it. It was safe to say, oh man, we stuffed up. Without the fear of blame, without the fear of losing your jobs, without the fear of being perceived in a negative way. It was a culture of learning, a culture of being able to say, look, we got it wrong. How do we make sure we don't do it next time? So a little test for you all. If there's a scale of 0 to 10, right, and 10 is really high psychological safety, and 0 is none at all. What do you think the average team psychological safety is at? And those of you who know, particularly DataDrivesInsight people, do not say. What do you reckon the average number is across all industries, across all teams? 4? Okay. 3? 2? 6? Okay, the answer is 3. So you did well.
Pretty good, well done.
Well. You're in the right profession. So our job is to help teams and to help people to identify their own thinking that's blocking their low psychological safety, and also to help them build their skills, yeah? Help them find their voice. So why 3 out of 10?
Because of culture.
Yep, the culture, yeah. So a lot of teams, the culture is, it's better to just kind of hunker down. Yeah, don't challenge.
Disempowerment.
Yeah, lack of empowerment. Yeah, don't speak.
Generational.
It could be generational. This is how we've always kind of done it. This is how we've operated. This is the culture we're walking into. This is what we do.
experience that they've tried to give and
Yep.
they've either been knocked down or
Yeah.
ridiculed.
And sometimes it is experience. I have tried and I got knocked down, so therefore, I won't do it again. Sometimes that's true and sometimes it's not. Sometimes we just carry that view in as we come into a new organisation. You were going to say something?
Driven by leadership.
Yeah.
Driven by education and the way that we've been brought up to work complex.
Love it. There you go. So it taps into that concept of artificial harmony again. And artificial harmony is that way of, we desire safety in relationships. So one of the ways we think we do that is just by biting our tongues. Yeah? The challenge with that, as we all know, because we all fall into this category at times, myself very much included, is that as we bite our tongues and as we kind of, just try and keep the peace, and we're so good at convincing ourselves that we should do this, but as we do that, the resentment builds. And usually it comes out later in a volcano. My husband's at the back, you can tell him, he can give you plenty of stories about this, That's when we kitchen sink. That's when everything comes out. Is that right? Okay, good.
Psychological safety, everybody.
Yeah, that's right. So artificial harmony is an interesting thing because we're talking, Ash and I were talking this morning around, as coaches, we have a different kind of relationship. As psychologists, we have a different type of relationship with the people that we work with. And how we set that relationship up initially is to say, look, as your coach, part of my role is to give you some feedback. And sometimes I'm going to give you feedback that's going to maybe sting. Sometimes I'm going to give you feedback that you might find quite confronting. But because I'm here to work with you and because I'm one of your biggest fans here, that's what I'm going to do. Are you up for it? And there's safety, therefore, starting to be built in that relationship. Now, how often do we have those conversations, or do you hear of those conversations happening in teams in the workplace? Not very often. So we're going to go through some examples with you in a little while. A couple things I wanted to show you was when the study's been done by Gallup, it talked about, when we move a team from a 3 out of 10 psychological safety to a 6 out of 10 psychological safety, which again is not very high, but it's actually kind of hard to do. Yeah, it is a big leap. It's not impossible because we know it happens. But just by moving it from 3 to a 6, look at the impacts it has. 27% reduction in turnover. Yeah, so people, and that's a huge issue. I know it's a huge in WA where we're from. I'm sure it's similar across over here as well. 40% reduction in safety incidences. Because people are going, hey, you know what? I'm concerned about how we're doing this. Can we talk about a safer way of doing it? Now, often when I do that, if I'm especially saying this in language in mining organisations, particularly at the front line, I go, now we don't talk like that. I'm like, okay, what do? You go, this shit's not working. What are we going to do? I'm like, it's the same thing, just packaged differently. Do we have the voice to actually share it? 12% increase in productivity, which is actually a lot. So if we can shift the psychological safety, it has really big impacts. All right, you've probably seen this. Anyone who's ever done LSI before, human synergistic stuff, I think we kind of stole it from this initially, didn't we?
Yeah.
We probably did.
We can refer. We'll reference them.
Yeah.
There you go.
Performance equals potential minus interference. Yeah? So potential is, stuff we've got so much potential in this room. There's so much knowledge and ideas and experiences that we can draw on from each other. The same thing within teams. But often there's a lot of interference that's there, personal interference as well. So if you think about yourselves or in teams that you've worked in before, what's an example of some interference? Let's say, we're in a group environment, we're in a team environment, we're talking about innovation. We're talking about, some new ideas. And one of you might be sitting there going, got a really good idea. Don't think I'm going to share it though. What stops us from sharing?
Fear of looking bad.
Yeah. What if I say something and it just like, no. And they go, oh, why did we hire Kathy? That was a crazy idea. What's some other things, other fear-driven kind of things that we might say to ourselves? We'll look bad.
You've got the people who will tell you immediately that it won't work.
Yeah. Yeah, you get shot down. Yep, so I've raised an idea. I think it's really interesting, exciting, but it's been hit with a no bat, or it's been shot down. So usually it's at that point when we hit a roadblock or we get hit back that we form that fear even more. It reinforces that view of don't speak up, just stay quiet. And so as teams, if we don't know that that dynamic is happening in our teams, then we are blocking the potential of the outcome. So the measure that we've designed identifies whether that's existing in a team. All right, diversity. Martin talked about diversity. And unless you have psychological safety, it's kind of pointless. Maybe not pointless, I shouldn't say that, but...
You'll meet your quotas, well done.
Yeah, you'll meet your quotas, you get the compliance tick. So you can have a team with really high diversity. Okay, so you've got an opportunity, there's richness of views, there's ideas, lots of different ideas. However, because we've got low psychological safety, they're not feeling safe to express them. So it's untapped. At the other end of the continuum, we've got really high psychological safety in a group that's actually not very diverse. So you're going to get the best out of those people. They're going to have great, chats, and they're going to bounce off each other, and they're going to challenge each other, which is fantastic. But without the diversity, you end up with the concept groupthink. So when we're working with, we're joined with a group called CEOs for Gender Equity back in WA, and a lot of their focus is around really increasing the quotas, the ratios of females, and increasing diversity across organisations. And what they're starting to really recognise now is that that's not enough. We need to make sure that we're supporting people by creating really psychologically safe environments. But how do we do that? How do we know what they are? Hence what we're going to show you in just a few minutes. The gold standard is inclusivity. Yeah, so when we have a combination of high psychological safety, it's not coming off my mouth easily today. High psychological safety and high diversity, then that's where the true belonging and safety exists. A couple of little interesting bits of research we found. We surveyed some people from the human services and grabbed their data set. 907 female employees, 166 male employees. What we found, because all working in a kind of a female-dominated industry, it was in disability and care. And what we found here was that female employees feel their unique skills and talents are valued and utilised significantly less than their male colleagues. So even when you have a highly, a female-dominated organisation or industry where quota numbers, diversity numbers are up there a little bit more, then we can see that it doesn't actually pay off. And even more so, the female employees also felt less likely to bring up problems and tough issues, and they're more likely to feel rejected for being different. So even when you have that, yeah.
Was it, do you find that the males are predominantly in the executive role?
Yeah. Yeah. That's true, wasn't it?
Yeah. Proportionately better equality in these organisations than the average Australian organisation. All of these organisations had a 50-50 representative on executive. However, the males were typically of a higher level than the frontline workforce. Exactly.
So what Sasha's going to go through with you now is more of the information around the data that we're finding, the insights that we're finding, and they're also going to be talking about your results in terms of how you filled in the PSI as well. There you go. Over to you.
Awesome, thank you. So, I mean, Martin talked about the world of work is changing, and we know that more so than ever. Post-COVID, employee expectations are accelerating way faster than what organisations can provide, and organisations are struggling to keep up. And most organisations are rolling their eyes a little bit. I'm sure some of the leaders you're coaching a little bit like, oh, these Gen X, Zs, whatever they are, we can't keep up with them. But we have to realise that's actually the reality. That's the world of work these days. We've been introduced to concepts called flexibility, so much more. And there's a real strength of that because, especially from the diversity and inclusion component, it's giving so much more access. What it's also doing is unfortunately giving us some uncomfortableness around these terms. And our experience, and just chatting to a couple of you in the morning tea break, as some of you are having the same experience as us, is unfortunately psychological safety and psychosocial hazards, because it's now standard. Leaders are scared about it, they're worried it's going to be thrown in their face, and they don't know how to manage it. They've been told it's important. They get that compliance-based training, right? But then they go, oh, but so that means I can't give feedback on someone's performance because suddenly they won't feel safe anymore with me. What do I do? How do I have those discussions? So as coaches and as leaders in these industries, we wanted to provide you with some clarity between these distinctions to equip you to give the language to your leaders of how to respond to those concerns, while also figuring out how to coach them towards that. Because the world of work is changing and we can't get away from that. And well-being is also another hot topic, and this is where I want to make that distinction. And the key distinction here, there's two terms that are often used interchangeably, and I want to make the distinction between them. Psychosocial risk, that's now, legislated, and leaders and organisations now have to manage psychosocial risk just like they would physical safety, which is a different concept to psychological safety. Let me explain why. Psychosocial risk, when we don't manage it, it can bring a team or an individual from a place of neutral to a place of concern. Right? What I mean by concern is their well-being's impacted, they're feeling isolated, right? They're feeling bullied, they are fearful, they're insecure about their job, they're not clear on their role expectations and what's required of them. As leaders, we need to manage psychosocial risk, because if we don't, there's a concern. And now it's a legislative concern as well, right? So psychosocial risk is really important to be aware of, but it's not the be all and end all. Because what psychosocial risk will do is take you from concern to neutral. And that's all well and good, but how do we take, as Abby was showing with the research, how do we take it from neutral to that 6 out of 10? How do we take it further? And that's where psychological safety lives. So psychological safety takes a team and an individual and an organisation from neutral to high performance. And this is where people feel they can problem solve. They can differ with each other constructively. They can look for continuous improvement, better ways of doing things. They ask for help. They have a culture of learning, of continually looking at things and learning from it, growing and having those differing conversations. And that's where we see the high performance. Because leaders feel uncomfortable and fearful of managing psychosocial risk, they often miss the opportunity and the gold to utilise psychological safety. And that's where there's a real risk for us as coaches and professionals in the industry trying to support people to understand that distinction, but then also to transform and capitalise that. So the tool that we're going to walk you through that, and thank you so much to those of you that filled it in, or it's confidential, we won't ask you to identify who you were. What we did is we assessed both of these in a short, brief manner. We assessed your current level of psychosocial risk. And your level of psychological safety. These are your actual results, and we're going to unpack them a little bit further. So from a risk perspective, pretty good, right? 30% risk level. Risk is a concept, you don't want too much risk, right? So these dials are meant to be going in the different direction, okay? You don't want a high level of risk. If there's a high level of risk, we've talked about, there's concern, we don't want to do anything about that. So, there's a 30% risk level. It's dipping into the medium moderate space though. You're not low necessarily. So we're going to unpack that together and take a look at, well, what are the risks that I know you're not a team, however, you're individuals that are like-minded, that are part of a community. So let's understand what are the risks that you're facing, and we'll have a conversation about that. In terms of psychological safety, 70%, pretty good, right? Not to be confused with the 1 to 10 scale. We're getting a little, we'll play around and explain that in a moment there. So I'm not going to say you're a 7 out of 10. But you are well above where the average from our data set is sitting. So there's some strengths there to capitalize on. You're feeling psychological safe within your teams and externally as well. So let's take a look at this data. We're going to start with the risk level. Now I'm hoping from a font size perspective, those of you at the back can read all of these, but if not, I will run you through these. But I'm going to give you a moment just to take a look. These are all the different questions that we asked in the Pulse that assess a risk level. Now, this tool isn't designed to replace annual engagement surveys. Key distinction, this is quick, this is instant, you get the data feed straight away. Annual engagement surveys, they're much longer, they're done once a year, and it's obviously a big comprehensive rollout, okay? So this isn't designed to replace that. So you'll see there's a lot less questions than typical, but it's in the moment pulse opportunity to figure out what is going on, what's the level of risk of the team or the group of people I'm working with. So let's look at this community based on the 16 people that responded. What stands out to you when you take a look at this? If you're a leader of this team and you're wanting to manage this community's risk level, what's the first thing that stands out to you when you take a look at this?
Effort to reward.
Yeah. I feel the effort I put in was equal to the reward I took out. 25% of people are saying rarely. 6%, not at all. So nearly, just over 30%, nearly 35%, 6% some of the time. About a third of the group, you know what? The effort I put in is not equal to the reward I take out. Now I'm assuming a few of those 16 people are coaches. So I'm interested in that. What's the difference between the effort you put in and the reward you take out? So in just a moment, I'm going to pose a question to you to discuss at your tables. I'm sure you're thinking about that. But I just want to see, is there anything else that stands out to you when you take a look at this?
Satisfaction.
Yeah. There's some gaps around satisfaction. There was someone looking at the strengths. Yeah, awesome. Some great, yes, there's a lot of positive. I was committed to our team's current plan, 94% most of the time or all the time. I'm committed to where we're going. I feel like my workload's manageable. Some of you are like, really? Who was that? No? Well done. Your workload's manageable. You're obviously getting that, fitting it within your lives. But you're not as satisfied as you could be. So, this is our opportunity to turn the invisible visible, right? This was happening anyway. Let's have a conversation to talk about it with your peers within the community to figure out why. I wonder why people in this community may not be feeling that the effort they put in is equal to the reward they take out, and maybe because of that, they're feeling less satisfied. That's the question to discuss at your tables. I wonder what's going on there. Go for it, we'll give you a couple of minutes at your tables. Let's come back to the main group. Abby, what were some of the themes you heard when you were eavesdropping?
So what we talked about at this table was, maybe in this group, because a lot of us are sole traders, we work on our own, that sometimes we don't have that opportunity to give each other feedback. We don't have a team member that's there to go, oh, great job. And maybe for some of us who do work in teams, that's more prevalent. And saying that, the table also talked about that, sometimes that doesn't exist even in a team environment where we don't acknowledge each other's good efforts. And it just doesn't always mean money for some people, but for some people it can. Did I get that right? Okay, good. What were some other observations that the groups at the back or anywhere else kind of noticed about that question and what came out for you in your discussions?
I'll jump in.
was fascinating listening because I drew a link between the fact that I don't feel that the effort I'm putting in being rewarded with.
Yeah.
And there's another one there that says I'm not being recognised for the work.
Yeah.
So in my head, I'm kind of computed out. People not being recognised,
Yeah.
not being satisfied
Yeah.
for their work. That wasn't the case at all.
Oh.
And it was a conversation that started spinning up. There was sort of financial elements. In one case, there was a fulfillment, bigger, more than finances in another case.
Yeah.
So it's funny, it sparked these great conversations.
Exactly.
We had to get it on the table and have the conversation about it. But
Yeah.
it went against the initial link that I made, well, this team's not being recognised for their performance.
It's exactly,
It's so fascinating because when a leader looks at this in other organisations, you know, they kind of go, oh, all right, we're going to implement a reward program. It's not really fitting what I was saying. So it's not, what this does is it's bringing the invisible visible. We're having conversations. It gives us a chance to go, what does that mean for you when you filled that in, you know, or when I filled that in, it was because of this.
And that's the beauty. So that's why I said this isn't designed to replace engagement surveys or anything like that. It's designed to create a platform, because what happens with most engagement survey rollouts, the responsibility of the change often sits with middle management who are flat out. Your HR, your people and culture department are also trying to recruit and get new strategies there, get that, you know, EVP, there's all this other stuff that's going on. And so often it's like, oh gosh, are we up to that annual survey again? Did we do our action planning last time? So the intention is exactly that, Dave. You could look at it and go, wow, I think it's this, let's do these strategies. Hold on, let's just pause and bring the results directly to the team at the time that they do it. So it's straight away, it's immediate. You're not waiting for a whole formal debrief, right? You get the results straight away and you spark a conversation. If you don't mind me sharing, we use this every month in our team. So at Verizon, we're a team of, so set it for DataDrivesInsight. We also have a coaching business. There's, 8, 10 of us in the team, very small team, but we have our monthly meetings and we use this every month. And it's really great because the first 10 minutes of our team meeting, we pull it up and just check in, how are we all doing? Now you'd think mostly psychologists and coaches, you'd expect a lot of green, right? A few months ago, we had this really interesting moment where this job security, where's that one there?
Third one.
Yeah, thank you. I feel secure about my role position in the team. Now some of you were like, oh, there's still a lot of green. You're right, there was still a lot of green, but there was enough red and orange for us to realize at least 1 or 2 people in this team aren't feeling secure. Now that just boggled us, because if anything, we're trying to recruit. Like, we don't have a security problem. In my mind, your jobs are so secure. But there was a feeling. Now, it was only 1 or 2 people, but it wasn't there the month before. So what it did is it gave us an opportunity in that meeting to go, what are we doing differently now? What's happening now that was different to before? Now, it took a lot of courage, and this doesn't have to happen. You can actually have a conversation without someone owning and saying, I was one of those people. But because we do this regularly, it's kind of created a bit of a culture. Our payroll officer raised her hand and said, that was me. And again, I was like, what? You're our payroll officer, like, where are you going? But that was her experience. And what had happened, because she is removed from the coaching and facilitation and the research side of our business, because she's payroll, she wasn't privy to the projects we were doing at the moment. We hadn't shared information with her over the past month because we've been so flat tack busy that we haven't been in the office. She hadn't been picking up on what was happening. So it wasn't a huge concern, right? But we caught it that month because it grew from the month before. We had a conversation about it, and now we're all a lot more mindful to check in with our payroll officer and just let her know what we're doing. Because before that, I had a view that we're all so busy, she doesn't want to hear about what I've been doing. She just wants to get onto a spreadsheet. But no. And so what it does, it brings an opportunity for you to notice something and catch it before it becomes a concern. And I think that's where leaders get worried about the concern aspect and protecting themselves. So they bring in a whole audit and they bring in all these organizational psychologist experts, and I shouldn't run down my profession. However, they come in and with all these audits and these, it was funny, I work with a local government at the moment and they're like, it's okay, Sasha, we've got these people coming in, they're doing a 12-pillar strategy. It's like, whoa, well done you, but wow. Let's deal with it before we've got to do a 12-pillar strategy. Let's have a conversation at the team where the people in the teams feel empowered to resolve it before we even need to get to that point. And that's where I think there's an opportunity for you as coaches to alleviate some of the fear for those leaders, to help them realize it's actually a little bit simple once we can turn the invisible visible. And you'll have the experience that you had just then, Dave, at your table, with realizing, through listening, I was able to get a different perspective. Let's take a look at the psychological safety questions. So this acknowledging, there's a little flaw in our network here because a lot of you are sole practitioners and we ask some questions twice. First, we ask the question, how do I feel within my team? Then we ask the question, how do I feel with people outside my team I work with? And some of you are going, it's just me. So I want to preface it with, remember that is the case in your sample. And you can also imagine in a real team how helpful that distinction would be. Because a lot of people are very comfortable saying, yeah, I'm fine here. But in this maintenance team, when we have to work with production, that's when things are challenging, right? Or, oh no, our HR team are fantastic, but everyone in the organisation hates us. As soon as we arrive, they think, oh, here come HR. So it's my external psychological safety that's low. So let's take a look at your internal psychological safety, for those of you that were able to connect somewhat with that. What stands out to you? What do you notice?
It's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You feel safer? Yeah, cared for, respected. There's some opportunities around sharing information. Right? People not feeling information shared as openly as they could be. You can see how this is different to the previous set of questions, which were around risk. Right? They were risks, got to deal with those. These are about, it can be, we can have a lot of yellow and orange in here and be a neutral performing team. Here is where we can identify what do we need to transform our team to be high performing, to be innovative, to be resilient, to be inclusive, not just diverse. And here are those key items there. So again, we're going to give you a chance to have a conversation at your tables. What do you notice when you take a look at this? But now I'd also like you to think a little bit like a practitioner, right? So if you were to have a conversation with a team and suppose these were their results, what questions might you ask to untap the potential of that team? Because now we're not about managing risk anymore, we're about tapping that potential. Okay, so put the role of the practitioner in your mind when you're having this conversation. Go for it, a few minutes into your tables. All right, let's come back to the main guru. Okay, so acknowledging that you're a little tricky sample, given a lot of you are individuals. However, for those of you that were able to, just suppose this was a team you're about to have a conversation with, what questions came up for you wearing your practitioner lens? What sort of questions or inquiries came up at your table that you would have thought would be helpful to help untap this team's potential? Yeah, awesome.
You were saying that maybe there's not an opportunity for them to actually have the time to present their own.
Yeah.
Sort of visibility there.
Yeah.
Supervisor.
Yeah, so let's have a conversation about that. And my guess is I'll say, because we're too busy, right? You ask anyone these days, how are you? Yeah, right? So they feel cared for. I think someone over here said, wow, there's a lot of strength in this group. We've got to acknowledge that. The team are feeling genuinely cared for. They feel connected to their team. And, let's pretend maybe they're a team that works across a couple of locations and they're doing a lot of virtual and teams and all that sort of stuff, but they're still feeling connected. So there's a lot of strength there. Yet, what's going on that leads to that to be the case? So let's unpack that. And maybe they don't have opportunities to actually share those ideas because everything is so quick paced these days. Could be. Any other questions or inquiries that came up?
I was wondering whether it's sort of the profile around process groups and early groups. Because of the sort of social contract of all the big polite.
Of course. Yeah.
That in this, if I was looking at a team like this, I'd be wondering whether, it's not so much that they feel safe, but they haven't learned yet.
How to do it.
To
Yeah.
open up and
Yeah.
brave enough to talk.
Yeah, that's such a good observation around what's the maturity of this team. By maturity, I mean like in terms of how long have they been together, right? Where are they on that evolution? Are they artificial harmony early days where they're being nice and kind and respectful, but perhaps they're not sharing ideas? Well, maybe they haven't had a challenge yet in this team. Maybe they haven't had conflict. Maybe they haven't had a moment where someone did upset someone and they had to talk about it and resolve it and get back into a good position with them. Maybe they haven't done that yet. And so they're still testing each other out, which is another reason why that pulse is so important. And so we use this also regularly with teams, because we also know, just like the nature of work's changing, teams are changing, right? You ask people these days, what team are you in? It's like, well, it depends on what project I'm working on, right? Because I'm actually in 4 different teams, depending on the day. It's the different projects. And some I've got great relationships with because we've had that, and others it's fairly new and respectful and polite. So having that opportunity to quickly get the pulse of how different teams are feeling throughout their journey as well is going to be really crucial for leaders, those leaders that you're coaching, to get ahead of the pulse, to make sure you're catching things before something goes wrong, and to utilize that potential as well, to have conversations. And as I said, because we've been doing this regularly now, even in our team, personal experience, it's a 10-minute conversation at the beginning of our team meetings, right? It doesn't have to be a very long, drawn-out process, and equipping your leaders that you're coaching on how to have those conversations. Again, you're a funky group. Some of you may not have an outside, but I'm going to share it with you. You filled it in. Let's see what we've got in terms of understanding it. So this was the data, and you'll see there's potentially less people that responded to this. You might remember, those of you that did fill it in, that there's always a not applicable question, right? There's always the opportunity to say that particular question's not applicable to me. And my guess is, given the percentages are a little bit more obvious here, a few of you put not applicable because you don't have teams that you work with outside your team if you're sole practitioners. However, what do we notice when we take a look at this? Let's just suppose it was a homogenous team. I felt I could, safe to make a mistake knowing I could learn from it. 6%, not at all, which I'm kind of thinking maybe one person out of the people, but anyway, we'll say 6% not at all, another 6% rarely, 13%, well, some of the time I felt I could make a mistake and learn from it. That's sad. So what's going on? Is it self-induced? Is it, messages you're getting from others? What's going on there? Let's make it real for you. And if those of you that do feel that in your profession, feel comfortable sharing what might be the case there. So we'll do this one a lot quicker, but a couple of minutes of your tables. What might be going on for you in this coaching community where you're feeling not as safe to make a mistake knowing you could learn from it? Brief conversation at your tables again. Okay, let's come back to the main group. It was interesting just eavesdropping. I won't call you just in interest of time, but eavesdropping, I heard, that mistakes seem to be more visible these days. Everyone's a lot more connected in a virtual world these days, and you can hear about things, and perhaps we're quicker to judge and quicker to blame, and reputational damage is probably more of a challenge than we've ever faced before. So a couple of interesting themes, and I'm sure you spoke about a lot of other things as well. So look, the beauty of our work is not only can we work with teams and unpack that, but the part that I'm really excited about with my research team is we can look at all of our data across all the industries and find some trends. And that's what we also wanted to share with you today. So you can see from a team level, that's how it all works. And Abby's going to walk you through a little bit more of that in just a moment. But I just want to end this, stat side of things, sharing with you a case study from one of our organizations that we've been doing this with regularly now. So what they found is that low psychological safety is actually costing them from a dollar perspective as well. So this is an aged care provider in Western Australia. They've got 13 facilities throughout Western Australia. And what they found was teams with low psychological safety had significantly higher sick leave than those with high psych safety. Let's take a look. There we go. So here's the team's psychological safety score, computed and averaged out so that we could make meaning of it. And then we've got the sick leave up there. And you'll see the lower the psych safety, the higher the sick leave. But let's put some actual numbers around this for those of you that have that accounting background. A standard entitlement of sick leave in this industry, 76 hours annually. Site 5, so the site that had the lowest psych safety, average staff member averaged 82 hours sick leave. Whereas the sites with the same organisational processes, the same leadership training for their leaders, the same, leave policies, mental health, first aid, the same organisational stuff, at the team level, Site 10, which had much higher psych safety, only averaged 34 hours of sick leave per year. So we unpacked that, and through conversations with this organisation, with these teams, we found out, you know what, when people feel uncomfortable with each other, when they feel there's, disagreement or conflict, but no one's talking about it, they're just keeping quiet, they'd actually prefer to not show up to work that day than to talk about it. Artificial harmony. Which we often talk about that in artificial harmony, speaking up, differing. Until you put the dollars though, there's that disconnect between the business case. So when we actually presented this to the C-suite of this organisation, there's a little bit of a ooh moment. So we don't need to tackle our challenge of costly turnover by having a whole new organisational policy. We need to target the team level and what's going on. We need to understand what's happening within these pockets, these subcultures, because the structure of the organisation is the same. We need to figure out what's going on there. And so what's really interesting is when we put some dollars to it to help this organisation unpack it further, and one of the only real dollar terms we could put to it was the spend on agency fees, because obviously if I don't show up, Mrs. Jones still needs care, so someone from an agency comes in, right? So if we actually put those dollar figures, we look at those actual costs of these actual employees, Site 5, with the lowest psych safety, not only had the highest levels of sick leave, but it cost them, nearly $600,000 per annum in sick leave and agency fees, and they had the second highest safety incident ratio per employee across the whole organisation. If in their own organisation, I'm not even saying go to like a fantastic organisation, just move to one of the high performing sites. If you can increase your psychological safety to Site 10 and what they're experiencing, they could save nearly $400,000 in agency fees per year alone. And obviously reduce their safety incidents by 40%, which I'm not going to put a dollar figure to, because how can you put a price on someone being injured or harmed at work? So therefore, by spending, and this is where we get into the pulse aspect of the program, and we're going to give you an experiential opportunity to see what goes in addition to the program, in addition to the pulse to make it a program. But by spending only, under $2,000 for this team to participate in the program in a year, they have an opportunity to save $30,000 per month in agency fees alone. The business case is there. So let's equip your leaders to actually get into understanding their team psych safety. Yeah, question.
Because for me, and part of our conversation started because of my passion around aged care.
Yeah.
Is there research that then shows, I think one of the frustrations for me is that they can show that in relation to the people who work there, but what they're not measuring is the cost to the residents, families that are having to,
hugely.
When none of the night shift shows up, and then potentially it's not just the agency costs, it's that poor Mr. Smith is sitting in a soiled nappy for 90% of the night instead of having someone. Do you know what I mean?
It's the people cost, and you're right. So we assess the team. We don't have the organisational people data, but I did find a paper that did that. It was in the States. They looked at a residential care facility in the States, and what they found was that for every one instance that a staff member didn't feel safe to speak up, one instance, it cost $13,000. And you're like, where'd that come from? Because most of the cost was actually the cost to the person, moving, dissatisfied, all those things. $13,000 for one staff member not speaking up. And that to me, you're right, that was a piece of research that explored all of those factors. Because you're 100% right. Ash?
Just a quick point too. I happen to be coaching that organisation that Sasha's presenting there, with Sasha and the others. And so there's so the question that you asked is, very dear to my heart because it's really all about people and then, in this case residents. So this particular organisation won the DataDrives highest award for culture, even though there's a few sites that are moderate in psych safety. One of the differences, there's a tool that's called Cisco, which is it's a comprehensive assessment of the culture, but also capability and also residents' experience of the quality of care that they're getting. That's what Cisco is about. So it's a very comprehensive assessment. And I think this group have like 3,500 residents or something like that. I can't remember exactly the numbers, but if anyone's interested in the study, I'm sure Sasha can send it to you. A couple of thousand residents filled in and have done every year for 5 years.
6 years, yeah.
6 years. Even through COVID, they had a net promoter score, these guys, of 70. Wow. So if anyone understands net promoter score, a 70 is unbelievably high. And the difference between the net promoter scores is the residents and family members of the residents who actually fill it in. Some of the residents have dementia and stuff like that, right? The difference between the net promoter scores, the quality of experience and care from those residents in a high psychologically safe site versus low is stark.
The year after, which was the interesting part. So we saw the shift and the move in net promoter score a year after we saw the shift in psychological safety. It was really interesting. So it does it. You create psychological safety, then you actually change, which then has the positive impact on the resident experience. So it was a really interesting lag.
Sorry, there was that bit that stood out for us was like the impact on the resident was the last thing to really fall.
Yeah.
The workforce would thrash themselves to death, making sure that the residents were looked after. But eventually, they couldn't keep it up.
Cool. So some of you are probably asking, well, then what is this program? And I'm going to this isn't genuinely not meant to be a sales pitch. So I'm just going to explain it just so you can see what this organisation have been doing so you can get that understanding. So ultimately, yes, there's an indicator which we've all seen and you can have the dialogue and you can have the conversation, but it's designed to be circular, right? It's not just a once-off. It's designed to be, you measure it, you connect with the results, you reflect on the impact you're having, you commit to the change, you act on it, you measure it regularly. Now, this is probably the approach you as coaches are using with your leaders. So what the PSI program is designed to do is to take all the great work you're doing with leaders to the front line who often can't afford fantastic coaches such as yourself, right? By making it tech enabled. So the intention is to support leaders still through fantastic coaching such as yourselves, but actually saying to them, here is something you can give your front line because it's tech-enabled coaching, and Abby's going to give you an example of the neuropsychology that sits behind this tech-enabled platform that's designed to actually give this two-way feedback. It's not just one way. With you guys, it was one way, and we're going to give you the two-way moment to take away after today. It was one way. We got feedback from you, but in the actual program, you then get something back, right? So as a team member, you get something back, and what you get back is a micro-learning. The micro-learning is based on your team's lowest score. So for your group, it was effort and reward. And so you don't have to do this right now because Abby's going to sort of explain to you the psychology behind what goes into these micro-learnings. But I've put the QR code up here, so you're welcome to scan it because you'll automatically get access to this particular course. If you were someone that felt the effort you put in isn't equal to the reward you take out, I encourage you to actually participate in this micro-learning, this course that comes as part of the program. Because it's designed to actually, you'll notice, for those of you that are coaches, you'll notice the coaching framework that sits underneath it. We're basically coaching people through a process of connecting with what that means to them and then setting a plan of what they can do about that. All right, so I'm going to hand over to Ab to give a little bit of understanding of what sits behind these micro-learnings. And obviously we will still share these slides after today as well in case the QR code didn't work for those of you sitting right at the back.
How are we going for time? Oh, you're doing the thingy, okay.
We are, got 20.
Can I have the clicker?
Oh yes, you may.
If you're having any troubles with the tech, then speak to us during the break. Oops, other way. How do I go backwards? There we go. I want to just give you, I'll put the QR code up again if some of you missed out on getting it.
Yeah, it'll be in the slides we send out too.
I just wanted to give you a couple of examples of how this can be really, really beneficial. So, I'll go back to this one. So I was working with a group, bunch of occupational therapists actually, and I would say the culture was just not ideal. You could just, you know, when you walk into some organisations and it kind of hits you in the door, you know, that kind of feeling. And anyway, so I said, let's just run the PSI, let's see what's going on, and it was awesome. One of their biggest gaps was around I felt accepted for my differences, like really big. And a couple of people were like, whoa, that's really interesting. I'm really surprised. I'm one of the green, dark green. I feel really accepted for who I am, but it pains me that there's other people that don't feel that way. So I opened up a conversation, which was so beautiful, because and it does, you know, part of having the conversation is an invitation to start feeling a little bit safe, to put a little bit out there on the table and make that invisible visible. And so this beautiful person put their hand up and said, you know what, I feel very accepted, but if I'm honest, I don't think I showed that acceptance in other people, because there was a few people who was from the Muslim background, and he said, I don't know anything about your culture, and therefore I find myself avoiding you. And what that allowed the group to do was the couple of the people said, oh my gosh, I'm making it mean that you don't like me, that, you know, all this conversation came out on the table, and it aired it out very quickly. Now what they then determined that they were going to do, which they did do, was, hey, how about we all get together and talk about our cultures and our backgrounds, and well, let's have really frank discussions, and you can ask us anything. I remember years ago working in an aged care facility, and one of the ladies I was talking to, I think she was Indian, or I can't remember exactly, and she said, I'm very, very offended because someone did that to me today. And I said, yeah, great. And she's like, what does it mean? I said, well done. And she said, well, in my culture, that's something very different. And so knowing and feeling safe to have those conversations is really important. But again, what we do is we mostly fall down the other end of the scale of artificial harming, of just going, I feel offended, but I'm not going to say anything, I'll just push it down. And that distance in the relationship builds over time and time again. One of the tools I just wanted to show you, I'm sure you've seen this before, it's from Gottman's work in relationship counselling. Can you see that okay at the back? It's not beautiful
talk it through
writing,
what it is,
but I'm going to talk it through. So on the left-hand axis here is performance or relationship success. Okay, down here is level of conflict, from low, medium to high conflict. Now, we've talked about artificial harmony today, so where would that sit on the scale? So we've got low conflict, yeah? When we've got low conflict in a relationship, do you think there's going to be low, medium or high level of relationship success? Okay, most people say it's going to be high. That's down here. When we've got low level of conflict, now conflict, the name conflict gets a bit of a bad rap too, because conflict is really just different opinions. It's different views, yeah? So when we have different views and we don't talk about them, it's because of artificial harmony. Okay? Down this end of the scale, makes sense. This is the volcano. Yeah, it's when we've kind of gone, all right, okay, push it down, we're down here, let's keep the peace, let's not rock the boat. Anyone who's grown up with some of those mantras, yeah? Be the good girl, good boy. Okay, so as we push it down and bang. We know that high conflict leads to low relationship success as well. So where do we get the sweet spot? And this is like, I like my scales, so let's just go 0 to 10, conflict. At what spot do you think we get the high level of relationship success?
Medium conflict.
Medium conflict, yeah.
You're safe enough to say, but you're not actually feeling a lot of conflict.
Yeah, you're starting to feel safe, you're going to put yourself out there, you're going to say a few things, but it's not a heavy conflict and it's not biting your tongue either. And Gottman's theory says it's around about here, yeah? what we're finding, the more that we work with people, the more that we work with teams, it's actually around here. You don't have to have much conflict. You don't have to have a high level of conflict. It doesn't take a lot. It can be small little moments of courage to be able to say, I've got an idea. Or, hey, can I talk about this issue or this piece of equipment? I don't feel comfortable the way that we're using it. So it's little bits like that, or it's able to say, hey, you know, the other day when I was in that meeting, I kind of felt talked over. Or a knock on the door that says, have you got a second? I just wanted to say, since we got off on the wrong foot in that meeting, do you reckon we could have a chat about it later? It's little moments like that. It's what, sorry?
Yeah, which is why it's this side of the scale. It's not up that end. Yeah.
And do you mind if I share a little experience of you?
You've got 2 minutes. I'm saying that to protect Abby. Continue.
I'll make it even shorter. So some years ago, Ab and I and some of the kids were driving from down south back to Perth, and Abby had to do a webinar or something like that. Remember this?
Yeah.
And the presenters of this particular topic were going on forever and ever. And anyway, they had a little break, and I said, and I'm driving, and it's in the back on the computer sort of thing. I said, how's it going? She went, oh my God, it's like, you know, watching grass grow or something. And of course I said, oh, so are you going to give them any feedback? Right? And she went, wasn't thinking of doing that. Oh, so you're just going to suffer then? She went, no, okay, I'll give them some feedback. Right? Now, what happened there? You gave them some very, very, very gentle feedback. Right?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Vaguely. I probably suppressed it. Go on.
No, you did. You said, I'm just wondering if, I don't know, something. Oh, if I can raise the issue around pace.
A pace of, yes, I do remember, yeah.
Wow, they took a bit of offence, didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh, what? So we're not going fast enough or we're going too slow? What do other people think? And then other people are like, I think it's fine. So there's all this artificial harmony and stuff. And of course, those psychs that you were talking to.
Yeah.
This thing happens every single moment of a lot of times through the day.
It's
the normal thing to buy a tongue and not say something.
Yeah.
You don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to speak up. The final thing I wanted to show you, because the micro-learnings when you go through them are based on neuropsychology. Okay, so what Martin talked about in terms of having insight, you know, in order to shift meaningful behaviour, like in order to maintain behavioural change, we need to have insight first. Yeah? And so when we become aware of what our own views are and how they serve us, but also how they hinder us, then we can weigh it up as to whether we want to shift it or change it. Yeah? So even in that example, you know, what's the view behind speaking up to someone? It's often, I don't want to offend them. Yeah? So we use a model which you'll see, you'd probably know as well, view, action, result, very simple. So if the view that I have is I don't want to offend people, what does that lead us to do? Yeah. Bite our tongue. And what's that lead to? Resentment? What else? What was that? Death by PowerPoint. Yeah, it does, yeah. Boredom. More of the same.
Yeah, no change.
Yeah, no change. But it also leads to things like, you know, it's a resentment, frustration, you know, annoyance, whatever. But it also has a payoff. And what's the payoff?
You're a good girl.
I'm a good girl. It keeps me safe. And that's really hard to want to let go of. Yeah? It's like, I'm safe if I just keep quiet. So it's not until you weigh up whether the costs outweigh the payoff, whether people are going to shift. And that's where we as coaches are there to help people, to weigh that up. and to effectively help them form a new view. In order for me to speak up, if I'm going, look, the payoff, I'm ready to let go of that payoff because I think I'm safe, but at the end of the day, I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied. I'm not having good relationships. I'm ready to leave. I'm looking on Seek, you know, whatever it might be. So if I want a different result, it requires a different action, but I'm not going to get there unless I change my view. And so that's what the neuropsychology component of the micro-learnings is all about. So I'm really keen for you guys in your own time to work through that micro-learning and see what's underneath some of that reward and recognition one. Because, oh good,
yeah, even better.
Great, yeah,
fabulous.
Yeah.
But I was just going to say on that, it's also an open link that I sent you all. So, we genuinely believe in, the world of abundance and wanting to improve psychological safety across the entire world. So feel free to share that as well with your clients. If that's a particular topic that is relevant to them, feel free to extend that link as well. What I want to share with you though is, in addition to that one, that is one of a bank of many different micro-learnings out there. However, as well as the PSI that we're sharing with you today, we also have a PSI 360, an individual leadership capability assessment, which was based on a heap of research, the longitudinal research study that we've done with some people over in the US. And anyway, long story. That research found 4 factors that a leader can, that is crucial for a leader to own to create psychological safety with the people they work. One was curiosity, so well done to this author. One, what was the he got both, 2 of them, didn't he? And courage. Yeah, okay, wasn't necessarily courage, but I'll tell you the other 3, and I think courage fits in there too. So one's definitely curiosity. The ability to go, you have a very different experience to me, and I think I'm right. So help me understand what's going on for you. That takes curiosity, especially when you think you're right, right? The second one was caring, our ability to genuinely care about someone else. Now this is a tough one because most people will say, of course I care about people. I care about Abby so much, I've known her forever. I really care about her. But then if I saw Abby, doing something a little bit unsafe, and we don't work in a highly safe, she might be standing on a chair changing a light bulb, we're in an office, right? But if I saw her doing that, do I care about her enough to speak up? And this might be where the courage comes from. So it's actually not just the fact I care in a nice way, it's my demonstration of my care. That's a key leadership capability. Third one's purposefulness. So I'm purposeful about what I do. I show up in a purposeful way. Doesn't mean I have to do 8,000 things at once. It means, you know what, given everything we've got going on, I only have a limited amount of time in my day or a limited amount of interaction with you. I'm going to be purposeful about what I want to take from this. The reason why that creates psychological safety is it gives us that attention, that focus that Kathy was talking about at the very beginning, and that gives us an opportunity to get into it. The third one's connectedness. How do I create connectedness? Right? So not just teamwork, collaboration, genuine connectedness. And that's in our systems, our processes, as well as our relationship within and outside an organisation. So those 4 leadership capabilities are crucial, and I feel like we're speaking the same tune to that book, but yeah, I would agree they're potentially missing some around that purposefulness and the connectedness, because we are bigger than just our own leadership impact. We're part of a wider system, and we need to create those connected pieces so that it's not all relying on me. People shouldn't just feel safe when I'm there in the meeting, they should feel safe to speak up anyway. Good question.
Cynthia.
I've worked with a couple of teams where I've done this particular tool, and the leader seems like they're really genuine and open. And then when the results have come out, the way the leader has reacted. So even though the rest of the team is actually willing to be courageous and speak up, because they've got hope from using this tool and things might change, the way the leader responds in the moment just absolutely crushes.
Oh, you've dealt with that, Ab.
Yeah,
what would you say
definitely.
To that?
So I had we had a good example of that. And Ash and I did a debrief with the local government, and the lead person saw the results. We were doing a debrief with all of them, and he was irate. He's like, I think you fudged the results. I don't think this is accurate. And this is the only negative one we've, not negative, but first reaction we've had, but it was fascinating, right? And we're like, really, why is that? And he goes, it says there, there's 90% of people saying that, what was the one? I don't listen to ideas, that don't listen to it. And to their credit, someone else said, with respect, this is a team tool. This isn't about you. And so what it did is it started that conversation where it said, yeah, you hear us, we meet with you every week, but we don't discuss with each other. And so that's how it kind of came about that way. But the good thing about this is that how we set it up as coaches is this is not a leadership assessment. This is how each of us contribute to the team culture.
And you're a part of the team, so get on board, but we're not saying it's about you, and that can help with that defensiveness.
Yeah. Yes, question?
I just am interested in when you start talking to people, organisations about psychological safety.
Yeah.
It's still got a negative connotation, it's not the right. It doesn't seem to me, and the sector I work in, that it's well understood. I think people think it's a bit of a, I work in a heavy industry, and it seems like it's a bit airy-fairy.
It's a lot of fluff.
Is that a regular or?
It depends what industry. Yeah. So I think because it's become, there are definitely more people contacting us because of the compliance side of it. But often the people that are in that kind of people helping side understand the link. And so we often kind of, how we as coaches kind of get it in the door is often linking it to their pain point. What's your biggest challenge? So rather than talking about psychological safety, we've had some groups say, you can't use the word safety or psychological. Can you call it something else?
So we'll stick with the acronym, people, and we're here to talk about culture.
So because that word scares people sometimes. Ash?
Yeah, just picking up on the point that was asked earlier, the question about psychological safety. In certain industries, I've certainly had people say, Ash, you just cannot mention to my workforce psychological safety. And I'm like, that's cool, because psychological safety is really an environment. That's sort of the what. Team effectiveness is why all of this stuff exists.
Yeah.
And that's really what people are interested in. That's why people are interested. I want my teams to be as effective as they can be. And this is just one way that can add to that effectiveness.
And link it to their pain points. That's always
right. Just to add to that, I would make reference to that series model of 5 dysfunctions of a team. So in order to get to high performance, you need trust as the foundation, and I would argue that psychological safety is trust.
Yes.
So I always use that model when I talk.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, great. Excellent. Great. All around. Oh yeah. It can take a couple of iterations, but people sometimes are a little bit quiet at the first time because they're like testing this out, and but it definitely builds. I'll stop talking. Over you.
We just have.
Before you stop.
Oh, sure.
I just wanted to say it's a whole different thing when sitting here listening, about psychological safety, and you would know this in the work that you do, but from an education perspective. It's all about the child. It's, the focus is on we're doing this for the child. It's got nothing, what you're saying today, and the work that I've done over 20 years, it's just like, they haven't got it.
So Abby and I ran, the education department in WA engaged us to run for teachers, not for students, around not mental health first aid, but basically how to have mental health conversations in the workplace. And it was the lack of that. They basically said exactly what you're just saying, and it's
because I talk about psychological safety, and they're like, oh yeah, we do this.
But within each other. So I hear you, and it was so sad hearing some of their stories.
I work with TAFE teachers.
Same thing.
And this is really interesting.
The interesting thing is the people that actually come are people that are already
I know.
get it.
And
those that are just going in there and not caring how safe their students feel to say, I don't know. They don't turn up.
I know.
And I think first, let us thank.
Thank you.